Hey everyone, it's Book of Katherine. So I know that you guys have been watching my videos from Jim Jordan and Rand Paul and exposing how they've actually been voting for the GOP party. And I know that's been very, very difficult to see and very, very confusing. But as I dug into the votes of how GOP members have been voting and how Democrat voters have been voting, I kept digging into the votes and not listening anymore to how they tweet. I learned that a tweet costs them absolutely nothing. But votes are everything, and they told a very, very clear story. And I'm here to share that story with you today. So, as I looked through the votes, I learned that there is not really a GOP party and there isn't really a Democratic party. There really is a unified whole. They work together as one whole. When it comes down to something where the voters are all looking, if you think about it, we're not looking at how they're voting on a daily basis. We look when it comes to like a confirmation, but even then that confirmation barely went through. If McCain had been alive, we know it wouldn't have gone through. There are plenty of excuses. So it went by a hair, remember? So the vice president is the one who filled in that vote. They had to pull in a Democrat who's trying to save his seat. So I want you to really pay attention to the actual votes with me here, because that's what really counts, not what they say, but how they vote. But I want to explain to you why they're voting that way. That's what this video is about, is why they're voting that way. So for those of you who have been longtime GOP establishment people and who are going to have a hard time voting for new people, I want to explain to you who these GOP establishment people actually work for and why they're voting the way that they have been, why that's very, very confusing. Because it's not just Jim Jordan, it's not just Rand Paul, it's 73. Like there's like 73 congressmen, and in the Senate it's the same, and it's done on purpose, and I'm going to explain to you why that is. So I'm going to break this down. So as you can see, here's just one bill. I'm going to give you an example. So this is the Bipartisan Budget Act, right? So the Bipartisan Budget Act came along, and they called it the Bipartisan Budget Act. Now I want you to notice something. The House is majority Republican, and a majority of Republicans were able to vote for it. 167 Republicans and 119 Democrats voted no for it. Now, you would think more Republicans would vote yes for it because they would want to do that for their constituents. They're Republican. Why wouldn't they vote yes on a budget bill? Okay, here's what they did. 67 Republicans voted no. What they did was, and 4 abstained, which is basically a no vote. And an abstention is the same as a no vote. If they don't vote, we've been over this before, if they don't vote, that's the same as a no. If you add that up, that's 71 no's. So they gave up 71 no's, and that allowed 73 Democrats to come in and fill in as a yes vote. And by doing that, it became a bipartisan act, instead of just being red versus blue. Now, why would 71 Republicans give up their vote and allow 73 to come in and actually vote for this and make their record look good? Now, you may say, like, well, maybe they really wanted the budget. Maybe they liked the budget. No, I know that they were doing it to make their record look good. Why? Because if you actually look up those 73 names, did you know that exactly 73 races are up for contention in the midterms? In the House. Look it up, New York Times article. In fact, I'll show you. Here it is. 2018 midterm elections, House, right? These are the ones that are up for contention right now. You add it up. Here's all the districts that are up for contention. 29 toss-ups, 29 lean Republican, 15 lean Democrat. It didn't used to be those numbers. It used to be different. That keeps changing as it goes along. But look at that. 29 plus 29 plus 15 equals 73. And guess what I did? I looked up every one of those names. I compared the names. Of every one of those votes. Denim, toss-up, Denim. I looked it up for the voting record. Did they vote on this? Did Denim vote on this? Did they vote yes? Let's see. Boom. Denim voted yes. Right there. Denim. You will find every one of their names, 73 names, because they wanted to look like a moderate Democrat. A moderate Democrat. And your Republican GOP let them look like that by giving it up and making it look like a bipartisan act. Now you tell me, why would the GOP want these 73 people to look good for their races? Why would these 73 try to look good? Because we know from the Project Veritas videos, one after another comes out on these people that say, yeah, we actually plan on voting all no on everything when it comes out. Because all the people who aren't like this, all the non-73 people, because these 73 people, they kept voting moderate on every single bipartisan thing. These guys would give it up, and these guys would fill in on bill after bill to make their record look kind of moderate. And then the rest of the Democrats, like you can look up Democrats in Georgia who aren't in a contention, who aren't in a race this year, pure red. No on everything. Not a single yes. Just red. Senator Dianne Feinstein. Oh, she's in a race this year. And so she has some blues. Oh yeah, some yes votes. Oh, interesting. Isn't that interesting? Because she wants to appear like a moderate Democrat. But then you look at those tapes and isn't it interesting? They all plan on banning guns, which it's up to you on where you are on guns and everything like that. So I've learned a lot about guns and everything, and I was a teacher and everything like that, but I do find it interesting that they're not passing a single law about illegal guns. Like, they're not doing anything for illegal guns. That is concerning to me, that not one of the laws they want to pass has to do with illegal guns. I don't, that if they would go into that direction, you know, I'd like to see some laws on that side of things to go after illegal guns. I would like that instead of the sanctuary city things where everyone with an illegal firearm gets released onto the streets. Like Chicago has more gun laws than any other, like Chicago and Illinois has more gun laws than any other city in the United States of America, and more people are slaughtered there than anywhere in the country. And that's the same thing with Venezuela. They have banned guns. The entire country has banned guns. No guns are allowed in Venezuela, and people are just slaughtered on the streets. So I've really learned. I used to write article after article about, guns. So I've learned a lot. So it's kind of been a big change for me about that. I've learned a lot about research and everything like that. I'm just like, why aren't we doing anything about illegal guns? So, but then I learned about socialism. Socialism requires the people to be unarmed. Anyway, so going on, then we learned about the fact that they plan on impeaching. Not only that, but they're telling their people that, hey, we don't plan on impeaching. And then they actually have the lines of things they actually have written up. The entire staff knows what they're going to say after they impeach Trump. Like all of these people, their staff are actually saying it. They're like, here's what we're going to say after we impeach him. So these 73 aren't moderate Democrats. So why is the GOP helping them? So why is there this, remember how I said with Feinstein and with Rand Paul, and I said they're working together? Boy, did I ever find proof. On a mass scale, are they working together? And you want to know why that is? I'll tell you why that is. Now, isn't it interesting? We've learned that the Democratic Party has gone so far left and we can't believe it, right? Isn't it interesting the GOP has had the House and Senate for 2 years and they haven't passed anything? They've passed two things, a veterans bill and the tax bill. And the tax bill is only good for 6 months. They haven't passed anything else. They haven't fulfilled a single promise, not a single promise. So what do they really stand for? They're really good at talking. Let me fill you in. Doug Weed's Game of Thorns, right here. One of the best books. It's on my reading list. I'm going to read straight from it. Doug Weed is a presidential historian. He's used on both MSNBC and on Fox. He is one of the best I think he's the presidential historian. That's it. And they touted his book from sea to shining sea, and they had lawyers go over it for like 3 months, this book. Fine-tuning it, making sure it was double-checked. It wasn't just some random book they threw out, right? So it's research to the hilt. This is about Jeb Bush and Hillary Clinton in the case, because let's be clear, who did the GOP establishment want? Who did this whole GOP Congress want for president? Did they want Trump? who, by the way, has been said as the most conservative president. Even Ben Shapiro says it. He's been the most conservative president we've seen in a long time. More conservative than Bush. They're not saying he's radical. They're saying he's super conservative. So why aren't they going with him? Why aren't they being conservative, right? Even all the Trump meters said they thought, based on the candidates' positions, stated positions before Trump ever got in office, they said based on their positions, they thought that these guys would vote with what he's passing down at like 100% or 99% rate. And they're not. They're voting below. So why aren't they voting with their stated positions? Let's find out why, shall we? By 2015, the Hillary Clinton campaign and the Jeb Bush campaign boasted most of the same top donors. The major banks and corporations, which had grown fat off the Iraq war, which we'd probably be in a war again, by the way. Jordan Peterson said that. He said, well, an American president, it's a pretty big deal that we're not in another war. I think if you're going to judge a president of America, I would think you'd want to judge him by how many wars you're in. And you're not in a new war. I would think that's a pretty big, and I hadn't even thought of it. I hadn't even thought of that. But yeah, isn't it kind of weird not to be in a war? Isn't that kind of a new feeling? The major banks and corporations which had grown fat off the Iraq war, led by President George W. Bush, all lined up for both candidates. A Clinton-Bush presidential race was a contest that the banks and companies could not lose. But Doug Wead didn't know about Agenda 21. This guy. The real reason that the banks and corporations and the UN and the dictators of the world that have all their money with the banks owned by Warren Buffett and Wall Street and everything, they didn't know about this little thing. They didn't know about this guy. Have you ever seen the PragerU University video on Venezuela? When Venezuela turned socialist, the rich, powerful, and bankers, Venezuela had a lot of wealth. Wealthy countryside, just like ours, extremely wealthy. And when it turned socialist, they were able to take over all the industry and rape the land of its wealth. They plundered it. The top 1% plundered it. The banks plundered it. The rich and wealthy and the powerful plundered it. And then they flew out, leaving the people destitute, losing 35 pounds in 6 months from hunger, going over the border, starving. Lines of starvation. As Bernie Sanders says, you know, food lines are great. You can find the tape. Food lines are great, he said, in socialist countries. So they have the same backers, because you turn this little document, which turns the United States into a socialist country, which Obama was just about done. All we needed to do was finish off the Constitution, which is what they plan on doing. All the Democrats, when you hear them on tape, taking care of the rest, the First Amendment and the Second Amendment, that's all that needs to fall, and boom, Agenda 21 is done. We're just about there, people. And the Republicans helping out. And I know that might seem disparaging. And you might be like, no, not all Republicans are on board with Jeb Bush. Oh, really? Not all Republicans? Let's see here. Let's think about when you think GOP establishment. Who do you think? Like, you might not have been for Jeb Bush, but wouldn't you say, like, the Bush legacy is like, it goes back as far as the Clintons? Let's pay attention to something, shall we? Do you remember when I did my little video that said Illuminati or Agenda 21? I said, which one is it? And I said that they put out a thing that said, hey, you know, look over here. It's the Illuminati's New World Order, so that they didn't catch on to Agenda 21. Let's go ahead and see who announced it to the world. Who was the very first one to announce Agenda 21? Oh, Bill Clinton signed an executive order, and Nancy Pelosi introduced it on the floor. But who signed it in 1992? That was not Clinton. Clinton was not in power. That would be this guy. right here. And I want you to very much listen. This is why I say global warming is so important. I was working with one of my doctors yesterday, and I said, it doesn't matter where you are on the climate change debate. And she said, climate change debate? There is no climate change debate. And I was so glad that I had just done research recently because they had it right at the tip of my head. And I said, well, actually, you know, it turns out that since 1880 to 2013, the entire globe has only warmed 0.8 degrees. And we've grown by 6 billion people. And it was just like silence. I said, and actually like 45 million years ago, there was like 400 times the amount of CO2 in the air. And it turns out I said, it's all about the money. Some people would say, I said, we're coming out of an ice age. Of course we're warming. I said, I mean, there's climate change, but I mean, whether or not humans have anything to do with it is the debate. I said, you know, the Paris Climate Agreement was $100 trillion. $100 trillion. Who do you think gets that money to maybe change the climate? Maybe change the world's climate 0.0003 degrees in the next 100 years. I think that's the data. I'd have to look it up to be sure. But that's right around the thing. And I was just like, who gets that money? Every one of these tax initiatives. Meanwhile, China has no restrictions. None of the other things in the globe have the restrictions. It's just to get our tax money. So yeah, I mean, I think there's a debate. And like, she just was like, whew, it's pretty great. I was really happy. But the reason it's so important to have the debate, and I said even the IPCC admitted that IPCC admitted that they turned out the wrong numbers. I was like, yeah, so I think there's a debate. So, but I want you to listen to this because he says two things. Watch.
We've signed a climate convention on the importance of economic instruments and free markets. Were included in this mammoth Agenda 21 document and the Rio Declaration.
Did you hear that? He said we signed a climate declaration, which sounds great. Climate declaration sounds great. And then he said, with economic and free market models included in it. That's the point. Climate change is like the cover. Climate change is the pretty mask. And then the economic and free market is socialism at the local, state, and federal level for the world. This is all socialism implemented. And so when you see Bernie Sanders say, okay, these are all the initiatives that you need to vote for, those are all implementing socialism in little itty bitty ways. Would you like to see proof of that? Would you like to see proof of that? I mean, besides the fact that we knew, like, and also the fact that GP, like, let me just sidebar, but don't forget that the Illuminati cards did not just point out Clinton. The one other politician they pointed out was Bush. Don't you frickin' forget that. Isn't that interesting? Steamed vegetables. Gosh darn it, they both do it. Those are the only two politicians. The only two politicians. If you don't think clean the GOP and new politicians are necessary in order for your representation, your donor money, everything to actually count, they are just both of these sides are just giving lip to get in there and to do these guys' bidding for the banks and corporations, the 1% at the top of the global control that see the world as a globe economic system to just get the money from the globe. They don't see the United States of America. They don't see states. They don't see states' rights. They want us to be Venezuela and just rape the land and then make us into little drones. And it's so, you know, you think any of these guys are going to have a problem with a UBI? They're already approving a budget that's two-thirds government handouts. So we now have 1 million job openings and no one's taking them. Why would they? Why would they? Kids are coming straight out of college and going straight onto the couch, smoking marijuana, not getting a job, saying they're disabled, and getting a paycheck from the government or living in a hotel. Did you know I found out that government benefits were paying for people to live in a hotel. I was like, sweet gig. They got to stay in hotels. Hotels paid for by the government. because they didn't want to stay in like, the whole idea, we have this idea that we have to be able to live this sort of a lifestyle or it's too poor. And I'm like, some of us have to look back at how the hurricanes were and how it used to be back in how we used to live and what man can handle and see what real poverty looks like before we complain. And see what, and now we have all these regulations about how what workplaces have to do to actually adjust for people with disabilities. And yet we're handing out, disability paychecks saying, oh, you have a disability, so you can't work. No, all workplaces are supposed to adjust to a person's disabilities. So there are a million jobs out there for them, but they're like, I don't want to work for minimum wage. I had to work for minimum wage. I had to work for $5 an hour. Everyone had to work minimum wage. We all had to do it. All of us. You have to start somewhere. That's how you build a resume. It doesn't matter if you think you're worth it or not. It's what the market dictates. And they're working together. And you have to clean that GOP. We have new candidates coming in, and I know that you feel like you want to vote for the GOP establishment, but the GOP establishment is working for that, for world socialism. And if you want proof of that, go ahead and look at the places that are completely DNC. California, Portland, and Washington. Look at Portland, Oregon. Portland, Oregon has instituted more UN 21 regulations and law. They have instituted more of ICLEI stuff. They have instituted more green and more tax initiatives than any other state. So is California, and that entire West Coast is tent city. It is no different than Venezuela. And it was so interesting because Tucker just did an interview and he was like, he's like, the middle class has completely left California. They've completely moved out and now it's only the rich and the poverty stricken. And he said, that's Latin America. And I was like, that's Agenda 21. That's Agenda 21. And you can flee. You can flee to Arizona, Iowa, and Bowie. But guess what? Bernie Sanders listed Agenda 21 initiatives in states from Florida to Oregon. And that means tent cities are coming to you unless you vote in new people. If you don't want your streets to look like Portland right now with Antifa running around like mobs, which ironically enough, let's see here. Russia is named, NSH, psychics, KKK. How did they know the KKK would be calling back? Organized Army, Semi-Conscious Liberation Army. Guess who's running the streets of Portland? If you don't think they weren't telling you it's coming, I don't know what else to tell you. They're telling you it's coming. And the only way to do it is if you start paying attention to reality. And reality is votes. Voting record. Not what they say, but what they do. Oh my gosh. What they do. And I know there's some people we weren't able to get into the primaries, but there's a lot of people like Thomas O'Neill, like the GOP cheated him out, stewed him out or whatever. So there's a very good chance that he will be on the ballot in North Dakota. North Dakota, you have got to get Thomas O'Neill on. You guys have got to start researching. And I know the incumbents are going out there. The GOP is forcing them onto the stage with Trump and getting their names out there. Why do you think they're doing that? And then suddenly saying early voting, early voting, early voting. Why do you think they're doing that? They're like, put this name on the ballot. You guys need to clean the GOP and put the new names on the ballot and find out who those people are. It's fantastic that we got them out there. And for those of you who are new, just so that you're aware, we did through the entire primaries, we actually went and we took all the people who were voting against the incumbents, who said they were wanting to protect the Constitution, who wanted to protect freedom of speech, because that's what the Democrats plan on doing. They actually started gutting religion. They voted against freedom of religion. They voted against freedom of speech. And you think the GOP is going to stop them when they get in? Or do you think that's where it's going, honey? Because all of those things are what make us different from the rest of the world. And in order for world socialism to happen, in order for these free markets to happen, how did you say it, Bush? What did you say? Free markets? You can't have freedom of speech. You can't have people talking and opening their mouths.
The Climate Convention on the importance of economic instruments and free markets were included in this mammoth Agenda 21
Mammoth
document
agenda.
and the Rio Declaration. Let me be clear on one fundamental point. The United States fully intends to be the world's preeminent leader in protecting the global environment.
Made it all about the environment. Just kind of skip past the free markets and economic leaders. Isn't it interesting? And he's like, we're going to lead the way on this Agenda 21 thing. And oh boy, didn't we. We're going to fund the whole thing worldwide. So you tell me, is it really just the Democrats doing Agenda 21 and world socialism? Or is it the Democrats and the Republicans working for the UN and the banks who will make frickin' bank off America when the rest of us are silenced? That's what these votes explain. That's why they help the Democrats stay in. They don't want any new people. They don't want any new blood because they've got a good thing going in their opinion. They think that this is one big happy family that works together to defeat Trump, to defeat the American people, to defeat any new blood from coming in. And they want to keep this thing going. So they're keeping these 73 votes in. They're keeping these Democrats in. They don't want to defeat the Democrats. They want to make sure they stay. All 73 in the 73 districts. Very, very interesting. And of course, give it up. Give up 71 votes to make sure it looks balanced. That we have a nice moderate system working together. There is no difference. They're one whole. That doesn't work for us. They work for the UN. And the UN works for the world's elite. They don't have borders. They just have jets and private islands where they plan on living while the rest of us starve. You're going to have to take a risk. Vote against every ballot measure you see on a billboard because that was paid with their money. You need that kind of money to buy a billboard. When it says nurses say yes on Prop 29, that can take 3 nurses. Look through the ad campaigns. Voting the way every billboard tells you to vote got us here, got you poor, got your taxes to more than $10,000 on your head a year, made you as poverty-stricken and as payroll poor as you are now. It's time to start voting opposite all the shiny things and all the shiny billboards. So when it says nurses say we want 29, you vote no on 29. It's time to get gutsy. It's time to get revolutionary. It's time to vote in everything they say to vote. It's time to vote opposite. It's time to vote for you for once, instead of just following. No one out there is saying this. Why do you think that is? Why do you think they own the megaphone? Maybe it's because we're already living in the Big Brother universe. Maybe it's because we're already in the socialism realm. And there's one voice, and it's theirs. And I'm saying there's a way out. Take it. I'm Book of Katherine. Please vote in person. Absentee ballots are notoriously corrupt. People replace them, dump them in the trash. You got to go in person, go on foot, contact your work ahead of time, get the day off, go in, find out where your polling place is early. I love you guys so much. I think there's going to be a lot of lines, so go early if you can. I love you, love you, love you, and I'll try and do another video before November 6th. I love you. Bye. Oh, and donate down below if you can to say thank you. I love you.